Hello everybody, welcome to my Learn Salesforce Flow session. In this third session, I focused entirely on loops. As you know, Flow is a very efficient low-code development tool. And we have many non-programmers trying to step into the development world using flows. That's why it's very important to understand the concept of loops to achieve certain things in the development world. I broke the concept into several different pieces so that it's easier for me to explain. Now, in this session, I first created an Autolaunched flow where I grab a certain record and then I update the records that are associated with those records. And when doing that, I loop through those records. Initially, I did my updates inside the loop, which is not the recommended solution. As a second version of the same loop, I moved my updates outside the loop. Now, after that, I changed the type of the flow to a record changed flow so that we can see how to loop in a record changed after save flow. And in addition, I also showed another example where I did record creation instead of record updates. Enjoy the session, and if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to put them in the comments. I will answer all of them. Have a great day.
Hello, everybody. Tonight we are going to review loops that was requested by multiple participants before. So let me just set my screen up over here. Let me put the chat over here. How's everybody? Yeah, people are joining in. So the looping inside flows is a little bit tricky. There are particulars to it, but once you learn it, it's actually not that difficult. The one thing that's important here is that you understand the variable concept very well. You know, the record variables and the collection record variables. We are going to review that one more time before we get started. And so that we can understand the concepts very well, I'm going to try and cover a little bit less ground and then be a little bit less hectic about the topic. For me, it's more important that we understand the concept very well rather than rather than rushing through a lot of material. So please give me feedback on the chat channel, and if you want to join in live, either with video or without video, or just with sound, just let me know, because some of the questions you might ask, because it's a complicated topic, some of the questions you might ask could be the same questions that everybody's thinking about, and it might be good to answer them. Okay, so let's get started little by little. First of all, I wanted to tell you and remind you that on my YouTube channel, there's actually a video already on loops, right? So that one is a very, very simple example, and the video is less than 10 minutes. And if somebody wants to understand the looping concept, like at a basic level, you could just direct them to that video on my YouTube channel. I'm pasting the link in my chat window. You probably received it. And then let me just paste the link of the channel as well for you to follow and subscribe if you haven't already. Now, the thing about this example that I have on my YouTube channel is it is counting the number of records that we have in a collection record variable by looping through them. And after I put that out, Jan Lee, and you know Jan Lee has a wonderful blog, and she focuses on flows a lot. She just told me that I don't really have to loop through a collection record variable to be able to find out what the number of records are in that variable. There's actually a trick that you can use to find out what the number of records are in the collection. So that is also in the comments when you go to the YouTube video that shows how to do that. But I mean, my aim in that example was to show with a very simple example how to loop. I didn't really want to update the records or create new records. That's why I created that simple example. Today we are going to do something more complicated. Let me share my screen now. Before we get started again, let me just share my screen. Before we get started again, let me show you my universal containers variable slide and go through this one more time so that we remember how variables work. So variables, in the simple sense, you see my screen, right? You see the universal containers picture. So in the simple sense, the variables are containers where we can keep information temporarily, right? You know, whenever we want to do calculations, we want to keep some stuff and then use and reuse later. So we can put those into dedicated containers and then we can keep them for later. So when we're talking about a variable, we're talking about a container that can actually keep a certain shape of information. Like, you know, if we can keep in a container a text value, we can keep a number value, we can keep a currency value. So those values can change, but they always have to be of the same type that we have defined the container to accept, like in the variable. So if we define a text variable is expecting a string, obviously. So when we're talking about collection variables are multiple containers and number of them. They could be 10, 20, 30. There is no limit, actually, depending on how many we use when we go ahead and create and assign the values into our collection variable. They are multiple containers that keep the same type of information. In this example, we have corkscrews, and like I said last time, we could have multiple corkscrews. One could be red, the other one could be blue, the other one could be yellow. And when we talk about the record variable, it's very similar to the picture displayed over here. So it's a bundle of different containers that are of various different predefined shapes and sizes that are designed to hold certain type of information. So in this example, we have a bottle cap, we have a spoon, we have a long cocktail spoon. So all those can be held in those containers for us to use later. And they have to go into those certain shaped containers and be retained in there. So it's a bundle, let's say. It's a bundle. So we could have a contact record variable. A contact record variable is going to have the contact first name, which is of type text. It's going to expect a value text, and then it's going to have contact phone number, and the phone number is going to be a field of type phone. It's going to expect that value. And when we have a collection record variable, we have multiple of those containers, like n of those containers holding all kinds of different records. In the contact record example, you are going to have one tray filled with Andy's information, and the next tray is going to be filled with Zainab's, and the next tray will be filled with Robert's information. So this bottom line, the collection record variable, is an important concept for us today to go through. Now, what we are going to do today, we are going to work with cases. So I have created the example flow for us to go through. So what we are doing here, our aim is going to be, we're gonna, let me show you the example that I have already completed and run. So the outcome, the expected outcome of the use case is this. So whenever we run our flow on a case that's created under a contact and an account, we are going to work with cases in this use case and example. The flow is going to loop through all the cases that are closed underneath the same account, and it's going to calculate the duration between the closed date and time and the open date and time. So let me go into one of these cases. I have created a custom field on the case object, and the custom field on the case object reads, it is titled case duration hours. So what this needs to show after the flow is run is the duration between the closed time and date of the case and the open time and date. This case was opened at 11:05 and closed at 12:48 p.m. So there is about 1 hour and 45 minutes in there. In decimals, that's 1 hour and 1.72 hours, let's say. So that information is going to be calculated and updated on all the closed cases. And once the looping completes, the flow is going to go up to the account, Stark Industries, that this case belongs to, and it's going to again update a custom field called case duration hours. That's going to show the average duration of the cases underneath the account. So it's going to take the average of all the case durations for all the cases that are closed underneath the account, and it's going to update over here. So this is the use case that we are going to use today. Any questions about the use case? So let's go ahead and start building this flow. While you're thinking about your questions, you can ask me your questions and I'll get back to you. So now, like I told you, can we see the formula, the formula that calculates this, Robert? I'm going to build this one with you. So I'm going to build this one from scratch with you. So you're going to see that formula. Let's build that together. And, when we are doing it, if you still have a question, I'll be glad to go into the details of the formula. So as I told you before, here you can see I've built calculate case duration and calculate case duration screen flow. Let me just deactivate this one. We want to make sure that our record triggered flows are all deactivated so that this is not going to intervene. The ones that I have built before are not going to intervene with what we are trying to do today. So, I mean, I told you before, as I was going through different flow types, if you want to be able to debug your flow efficiently, you want to start with a screen flow. So what I'm going to do today, as we are working on this one, I'm going to start a new flow, and this is going to be, well, it's not going to be a screen flow, I'm sorry. It's going to be an Autolaunched flow. So I'm going to use an Autolaunched flow, and then from the Autolaunched flow, I'm going to also go to a record-triggered flow. So how can I do that? You know, my use case actually required that whenever a case is created or updated, I run this automation, or I can feed the flow that I'm using a case number, a case ID, and it's going to start with that. And that is going to be quite easy for me to convert to a record-triggered flow. Can you zoom the screen for a little bit? Yes, of course, of course. As I'm doing this, let me know if it works. I'm at 125%. Does this work? Let me just do this one more time. Maybe it'll center the screen. Do you see these letters better? Okay, let me create the flow. Okay, now Autolaunched flow. So what have we learned before when we're doing Autolaunched flows? Usually the way we start these things is we want to start it on a record, and the record number, the record ID, we can feed to our flow using a variable, a text variable that we mark as available for input. So whenever we run the flow, this is going to be the first thing that the flow is going to ask from us. So once I get that, what I can do is I can get all the details of the case that I'm going to be working on. So get case, get the case record, where the case ID equals the case ID input variable, and sorted by ID, and get only the first record and automatically store all fields. I mean, I know I'm going to be feeding a valid case ID, so there is no issue here. It's going to go get the case ID. Now, after I get the case ID, what I want to do is I want to get all the closed cases under the same account, because I'm going to be working on them, right? So let me just get one more get I need. Do you prefer auto layout versus freeform? I actually prefer freeform, but this is the new stuff, so you know, I just want to use that for your purpose. I mean, Salesforce is claiming this is easier to use for new users, so that's why I'm using this one actually. Get closed cases. So I'm going to be getting all cases where account ID equals, now I'm going to use this get case step, account ID. This is the previous gets account ID. Now, when you are faced with the selection on here, you want to be picking the account ID that's listed here without the right arrow. If you go in here, use account and then pick ID, it either doesn't work or it's not necessary. So unless you're looking for a different value under the account, you only need the account ID. Just go ahead and pick this one right here. So account ID equals get case account ID. I want to add a condition, and I want to say status equals closed. So I want to only get the cases that are closed. And, let's say sort them by ID. And I want to get all records and automatically store all fields. All right, I got them all now. What do I want to do now? My next step is going to be, I want to loop through these records. So I'm gonna pick my loop element, and I'm going to say loop closed cases. Now, there are a couple of ways you can loop. One of them is you can loop through your collection variable. And if you loop through your collection variable, then you're telling Salesforce to loop as many times as the number of records in your collection variable. And every time you're looping, Salesforce is going to be picking the next record in sequence, and you are going to be able to use the values that are assigned to your record variable. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to say, from my previous get, Salesforce created automatically a record collection variable for me, cases from get closed cases. And I'm going to be looping first item to last item. Now, this note is important. It didn't used to be like this, but in later releases recently, now we are also automatically, Salesforce is making available to us automatically the current item in my loop for me to work with in my loop process. So when I'm looping and I want to use the current record and the values under the current record, I need to be looking for current, the word current, and then it's going to say something like current record for loop close cases or something like that, and then dot whatever the field is that I want to use. We're going to show that, we're going to see that in action right here. So this is going to loop through all the records in my collection record variable. Okay, well, let me just do the questions and answers. I'm not understanding why to get case records modules. So, Robert, you don't understand this step here? Get closed cases? Is that what you did not understand? Okay, yeah. Go ahead and comment on that, and I'll get back to that in a second. Yes, why are there two? Okay, all right. Let me go back, and this is quite important. Now, because I'm planning to make this later on a record triggered flow, I created an auto-launch flow where I'm feeding a case ID to the auto-launch flow to get started. So when I save this one, let me just save this one. Let me just save this flow for just a second. Okay, now when I go to debug, this flow is going to ask me, which case do you want to run this flow on, right? So I have under Stark Industries cases. Let me try and find another one if I have another one. So I have also cat industries, right? Under cat industries, I have a case called catnip no good, right? So this is a case ID. So I'm going to feed this one to my flow. So what I eventually want to do, it's not going to work yet because we haven't finished the flow. What I eventually want to do is when I feed that case ID, I want to go up from the case ID to the account and then use the account to get all the closed cases underneath the account, because I fed already the flow only one case ID, but I could have 10 closed cases under the same account. I want to get all of them. Because it only sees one initially, I need to get the account ID first. Here, I just got all the fields that are necessary. I said, Salesforce, you take care of it and get all the fields that are necessary for me. But what I really want to get here is just the account ID. That's all that's important for me at this point. So from the case ID that was fed to the flow, I go to the account ID, and then that account ID I use over here. For that account ID, I want to get all the cases that are closed. If there are 10 cases, I want 10 cases. Not only that one case I fed into the flow. So that's what this second one gets me. And that's why the outcome of the two gets are different. One is only one single record. It's a record variable that comes out of get case. And here I get a collection record variable because there are multiple that I find. And then I want to loop through all those cases. And that's, if I can show you visually over here, under cat industries, I have 4 cases, view all. So when I feed to this flow automation one of these case IDs, it's going to go up to the account, list all the cases, check whether they are closed. So it's going to process these 3 cases over here. In the first get record, could you use a record variable that also holds account ID? Yeah, I mean, it actually creates a record variable automatically for me. So when I get one record in this get, Salesforce automatically generates, and when I say automatically store all fields, automatically generates a record variable for me. And that record variable is titled get case. Do you see the notation over here? So get case is the record variable, and the account ID is the field underneath get case that holds the account ID value, which I use as a condition to look for the same account ID when I'm doing my second get. So I say account ID equals the account ID that I just got from the first get, and then the status equals closed. All right, so let's say we got, in our previous example, we had 3. Let's say we got 3. Oh, you're welcome. Of course, this is tricky, right? It's important to get right. But even if you don't understand, it might take you a couple of times to go through this to understand. Oh, Robert got it too. Awesome. That's great. So now I'm looping through. I said in this example, we have 3. So in this cat industries example, there are 3 closed cases. So in my collection record variable, I have 3 case records that this is going to loop through. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create, let me create an assignment step. Let's say assign values. Let me say assign case duration, let's say, right? So first, I want to create a couple of variables. Let me create a count variable. Let me say this is the loop count. And this is a number. No decimal places, and the default value is 0, right? So what I want to do is I want to add 1 to my loop count variable. So the first thing I do in my loop is I make my loop count 1, right? So I'm counting my loops. Another thing I want to do is I want to calculate the duration of the case. So to assign the duration of the case, I need to go to the current record, current item in my loop. So that's listed over here, current item from loop. And this is a case record. And I want to find the custom field I created that says case duration, and I want to assign a value to this. What is the question? Could you please explain how looping works here, as we only look for a single account ID? Oh, okay, Parvati. The first get got us a single account ID. The second get is getting us all the closed cases under that account. So it's the second get record collection variables we are dealing with right now. So now, what did I do? I picked the current case record that I'm looping through. So I have 3 closed cases. I'm on the first one. So I'm saying, okay, take the first one, current item, and then take the case duration hours custom field for that record. And that needs to be equal. And here I need to make up the formula. That's the question that was asked before. So formula is going to be case duration formula. Would be great if I could type. So, and this is going to be a number with 2 decimals. And here, what I want to do is I want to subtract the close date and time, the created date and time. I want to subtract the created date and time from the close date and time. And to be able to do that, again, I need to use the current item from the loop closed cases. And underneath that, I need to use close date and time. It's right here. It's called close date, but these system fields are named close date, but they are date and time fields. So close date minus loop, again, current item, created date. Again, created date is also a date and time field. Now, these are, when you subtract 2 date and time fields in Salesforce, it yields a decimal of days. So this one you want to multiply by 24 to get hours. So you say close date and time minus created date and time times 24 is going to give me 1.5 hours, 1.6 hours. So this is going to be my formula. So if I assign this one to the custom field that I have on the record, it's going to take care of the use case for me, the requirement for me. There is one other thing I need to do, because I want to calculate the average of durations. I want to do another assignment and say like, okay, well, I want another resource that's called case duration totals, total variable. And this is going to be again a number with 2 decimals. And I want to add on every step of the loop, I want to add to this total the case duration formula result. Case duration formula. So what I'm doing here is this. Here, I'm counting my loop step. This is going to go 1, 2, 3 every time. The second one is going to calculate the current duration for the current case. It's going to say 1.5 hours, and then it's going to assign to the field on the case. The third one is taking that very same number, 1.5 hours, and it's adding it to a field and a bucket. It's a variable. It's adding it to a variable for me to calculate average at the very end. So for the first case, the duration is going to be 1.5 hours. For the second case, it's going to be 2 hours. So when I go to the second step, I'm going to have in my total 2 plus 1.5, 3.5 hours. And then if the third case is 1 hour, then I'm going to have 4.5 hours. And then once I'm finishing up my loop, I'm going to divide it all to 3, and I'm going to come up with the average to update to the account. Yes, the loop count variable purpose only, yeah, I'm going to use it to divide later on. Could you just quickly show the formula for case duration formula again? Okay, yeah, sure. I can show you the formula, no problem. So for now, let me just close this out, right? Case duration formula is right here. In fact, I'm going to just copy and paste it here to the chat window with the caveat that your field names are probably different though. So, you know, when you copy and paste this one, it's not going to work for you, but so that you can keep it somewhere and look at it, right? So now I have done this. Now I'm going to do something that I'm going to tell you later not to do. It's not a great habit, but if you know you're not going to have like 200, 300 cases underneath each account, if you're just going to have like 10, 20 closed cases under each account, then what you can do is you can update that information inside your loop, which is not a great idea. And you shouldn't get used to doing that. But for this step, we're going to do this because it's just simpler to understand. So we're just going to do an update step here, update records. And then we're going to say update case. So we're going to update the case with the ID that is the current item from the loop ID, case ID. So I'm going to update the case I'm working on right now, the current case that I have in my collection variable, and I'm going to assign the case duration hours from, actually I can directly assign from my formula. This also makes actually this step right here redundant. I don't really need this step anymore, but let's keep it in there because it is going to show us how we get to the next step and then do this outside the loop. So now every loop step, I am calculating the values that are necessary for me and I'm updating the cases. And once I'm through going through all the collection, what I need to do over here is I need to update the account. So for that, I need to first calculate the average. Let's create that over here. New resource, formula, average case duration formula. And then this is going to be, again, number with 2 decimals. So here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the total case duration total variable that I have accumulated and summed up, and I'm going to divide this one to the count. So in our example that we have been talking about, we had 3 records, so it's going to divide the sum of all the durations to 3 and then come up with an average. So that's my formula. I'm going to update the account with this value. Specify conditions manually, individually, and it's going to be the account object, and the ID for the record that we want to update is the account ID that we got from the first get. And then what I want to do is I want to update the case duration on the account, and the value is going to be the average formula, right? So let's save this one. Hopefully we got this right. Let's test it. So these numbers are already updated on here. I've run this on this record before. What I can do is I can run it again on this and then see whether I come up with the same numbers, because the flow that I have run this on was a different flow. So now I have 146 hours and then, 0.3 hours, 3 cases. And on the account, let's go back to the account. I have 97.86 hours. And then let's go ahead and check the update date and time on this record. It was actually updated yesterday, right? So I'm going back to the cases. Let's go from the account, Cat Industries, and then cases. I have 4 cases, but only 3 of them are closed. You see the status? So I'm going to feed this case into my flow, this case ID. Copy, debug this case, the flow, and feed this case ID to the flow. Okay, what happened on the right side? Let's look up to our debug. So it got the case ID. It did its lookup, successfully found the case, and then get closed cases under the account. The account value is assigned. There is a value under account. Successfully found the records. And then when I started looping through my record collection variable, this doesn't really list how many records it found, but I can see that there are 3 case IDs that it's looping through. Iteration 0. Iterations will start with 0 on Salesforce, but on my 0 iteration, my loop count is 1, as I designed it that way. My duration hours is calculated 146.79. My totals on the first step is 146.79. And then I'm updating this to the first case as 146.79. And then I go back to the loop. I'm going this time to the second case in my iteration, Now my loop count variable is 2. The case duration total variable is 293. I'm sorry, the case duration is 146.75 on my second step, and the total is 293.54. So it's adding these two numbers together, 146.79 and 146.75. And then it's updating the 146.75 to the current case record, and it's going to the third close case, iteration count 3. The duration is only 0.03. My total becomes 293.57. It's updating the 0.03 to the last close case, and it's going out of the loop. Once it goes out of the loop, it goes to the update account step, and the average case duration formula calculates 97.86, and it updates to the account. So let's see if that worked. Refresh here. So this record had 0.03 duration. Now it still has 0.03 duration. So you might ask yourself, did anything change? It changed because the last modified date is the date and time is the current time in PST. So we updated the record. In fact, we updated this field, but to the same value, because we were able to regenerate the flow that I have generated before, built before, the same exact way. Now let's see if that works when I change the situation here with the cases. So we had 4 cases here. One of them was not closed. I'm going to go ahead and close this. Need to change cat foot as well. Close cases and close this case, save. So now I have 4 cases that are closed. So they are all here, close, 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 4 cases. So I'm going to feed any one of them. Let me feed a different one this time. I used the 0.03 duration one before. Now I'm going to feed this one to my flow. And please also remember the one that I just closed right here doesn't have a case duration. It's empty. So my flow is going to do its magic. Debug. All right, now I'm not going to go through all the steps one by one, but I can quickly show you that I got 1, 2, 3, 4 case IDs, and then I looped, I updated, looped, updated, and the last count I see is 4. And my total becomes 316, 16. And when this is divided, because I just added a case that is of a very short duration, my average becomes 2259. Oh no, my average becomes 7904. The last one is of duration 2259, and the average is 7904. So let's go and refresh this right here, see if this value came. $22.59. Voila, guys. Here, let me go to the account. And when I go on each of these records, I can see this one is 22.59. This one is 146.75. This one's duration is 0.03. This one's duration is 146.79. And the account itself has 7904. Any questions, folks, so far? No questions? Okay, let me continue while you're thinking. If you have any questions, please let me know. Okay, let's go back to the discussion on why we should not do update get and create inside the loop. So if you know that the maximum number that your loop is going to run is going to be like 10, 20, whatever, this may not be a huge issue. But Salesforce has governor limits. So when your flow runs, in most cases, all the DML transactions in your flow, the database transactions in your flow, like get, well, not get, but update, create, are counted towards the same limit. So inside the flow, the number of update and create that you do cannot really surpass the governor limits. And the governor limit for a single flow is going to be 150, unless you do certain transactions inside the flow that actually splits it into multiple transactions in the eyes of Salesforce governor limits. There are ways you can trick the system, but in general, you don't want to be doing more than 150 DML operations inside the flow. So there are a couple of ways you can do this. One, you can create a decision element right here and then check your count and abandon after 10, let's say, put a cap on it so that you won't end up in trouble later on. Or what you want to be doing is you want to be doing your update outside your loop. If you do your update outside your loop using the collection record variable, however many, it doesn't really matter however many records you have in your collection, it's going to count as one DML transaction. So in other words, let's assume we have 160 closed cases underneath one account. If I go into processing 160 update cases inside this loop, this is going to hit governor's limits and it's going to abandon. But if I take this update step outside my loop and do all my updates here, that case update step is going to be only one DML transaction. Instead of this being 160 and this being 161, we are going to end up with only two. So that's why it's important to do your updates and creates outside your loop. So how can we do that? Let me just show you how we do that. So in this case, what we want to do is we want to delete this step. So we just assign the case duration formula here. And let me just go to my example here so that I can show you, and then we can rebuild it together. Calculate case duration screen. So what we are going to do here is we are going to create a collection variable. In this example, to be able to do our update afterwards, we cannot really use, the question is the 150 DML limit is applied to the entire flow. Yeah, unless you use certain elements inside your flow, you can do an apex callout, you can pause your flow, unless you do any of those, yes, 150 DML is going to apply to your flow. So, but like I said, in one update step or in one create step, you can actually create 300 records. That doesn't stop you from doing that. That's why we want to do all those DML operations outside the loop, so that we don't create a situation where we don't even know how many times the loop is going to run, and we might end up in trouble later. So that's why we want to do the update outside. Now, in this example, what we need to do is, I told you that the get here created a record collection variable for me. And I've been using that record collection variable over here, the one that says the current item from the current case from the collection. And then I've been using that for assignments. Now, unfortunately, when I'm doing my update outside my loop, I cannot use the same record collection variable that's auto-generated to be able to do that. So I have to create another record collection variable myself and then assign values into it, add records into it to be able to do my single update. So let's go back to our own flow and build that together. Just a moment. Yeah, so let me just get out of here. So this is the flow that we have been working on. So what I want to create is I want to create a new variable case. I'm going to call this one updated case record collection variable. So this is going to keep case records inside it. 10 of them, however many I have, right? So unless I check this one, this is going to be a record variable. When I check this one, it's going to become a collection, meaning it's going to keep more than one case records in it. So what I'm going to do is, whenever I calculate these values, I am going to add the current records to this collection variable. So let's see what I have done here. I have assigned already the case duration to case duration value to the current record. And that's all I need, actually. I'm doing this count and the case duration total formula for average. So this is what I need right here. So I need to assign updated cases to a collection variable. So what I'm going to say is, take the updated case record collection variable and add the current item from wait, is this how we do this? Let me just double check. This stuff is confusing, folks. Let me just check as well. Calculate case duration screen. Yes, I need to also create an updated case record variable. I forgot that step. Let me just go back to this. Let's do this later. So I have created already a collection record variable, and I need to also create an updated case record variable. And this is going to be, again, type record and case, but this is not going to be a collection. All right, so I have created two things here to recap. One, I created record single variable, which is called updated case record variable. And then I created a record collection variable called updated case record collection variable. So what I need to do is I need to assign here the case duration to the updated case record variable case duration. Case duration. And I need to also assign to updated case record variable ID the current case ID. So I'm creating a collection, a list, if you will, of all the cases, and I'm going to just put the case ID value and the case duration value in it. So in this example, I have 4 cases. I'm populating case ID 1, case duration, case ID 2, case duration, case ID 3, case duration. So I'm going to be assigning those values to the updated case record variable that I have created. And I'm going to take that updated record and assign to updated collection. And I'm going to say, take this updated case record variable and add it to a collection. This is the step that actually creates the list. So I have created the single record over there that only has ID and duration, and then I have added that single record to a collection here. So when I do that, I can create an update here. Update cases. And I can say, you know what? What I want to update is just this collection. Updated case record collection variable. So this step over here is one single DML, but it's going to update however many cases I have updated. So in an update state, I have to, in an update element, I have to provide an ID for Salesforce to find the case. And then I have to provide all the updated values that I need to update on the record. Now, regarding the governor limits, is that when you'll get an error stating this error occurred when the flow tried to look up records, too many SOC? Okay, well, there are, in governor limits, there are multiple different areas. If you look up the governor limits on the developer help screens web page, just a moment. Salesforce governor limits. On the Salesforce developers webpage, you have a list of governor limits. SOQL is actually related to queries, which is your get step. So that's a completely different other governor limit. Okay, so what we were talking about when we're talking about DMLs and the governor limits is this one. This is related to your update and also create. This is related to your get. Yes, and there is a limit for get as well. But I mean, this is a very advanced topic. Let's not go into exact numbers. Instead, let's know that we need to make sure that we don't build those steps inside the loop, especially when we don't know however many records we're going to process. Now, why are there two assigns? There doesn't have to be two assigns. I can do everything in one assign. I just divvy them up that way. I don't even think there is actually a performance implication, but I could have listed all of them under here. I mean, there's no problem regarding that. How does it know again which case is for which account in the collection? Okay, which case is for which account in the collection? Well, we are working with one single account. So Robert, I don't know exactly what your question is related to. So let's see if this works or not. I'm not sure whether I left anything out that, like I said, it gets a little bit confusing. Let's feed cases and let's go up, look here in our debug. So we have a loop of 4 cases and then 1. I have calculated the duration. I have done my assignments. As you can see, it's going through the loop and it's done 3 count and 4 count. And then you're seeing here in my assignment step where I'm populating all the case records in the collection, I can see that it has 4 case IDs. So the data for 4 cases are being accumulated in the collection. And then when I go to my update cases step, I can see that it's feeding into the system the case ID and the duration associated with that. So I'm only sending 2 values to the system. This is quite important. This is the reason why we are creating a separate collection. You don't want to feed the system all the information that you get from an existing record, you know, like created date, modified date, and all that stuff. What you need to send to the system, and if you have done imports into the system using data loader and some other method, you'll know this one. The system expects from you an ID if it's an update, so that it can locate the record, and then the new value for the field that you want to update. So I'm feeding all this to the system, and then I'm again updating my account, and I'm done. So how can I understand that this worked? So this is 7904 average, and this record was modified at 6:05 p.m. PST. Let me refresh. Again, my average is 7904, and the modified date is 6:05. It doesn't look like it updated, did it? Let me just see something. All right, debug. Feed one of the case IDs. Okay. Refresh. Okay, yeah, 609. I guess I talked for 5 minutes since I just ran the flow. I didn't realize that. So the question, if the debug details are very long, like it processes 10K records, are the debug details exportable? I don't think so. I don't think this debug is exportable. But you know what happens is if you end up in an error, it emails you the whole thing. You can see it there. So you can search it in your email, you can see it there, but you cannot really process 10K records. So, I mean, you're going to hit governor limits anyway. And if you're updating, let's say, 1,000 records in one step or something, even if you don't hit governor limits, that one step, if you're doing it in a collection, is just going to show up as one step. It's not going to show you 10,000 steps. It will show you a long list of values that it's updating, but it will still be in the same box. So, okay, let's do this as well before we finish up. A couple of quick things. What can we do with this? This can be a record triggered flow. That's why we built it this way. So what we can say is, all right, save this as a new flow and then call it and change the name to have record triggered at the end. Oh, I forgot to change the type. That's not going to work. Can I change it now? No, I can't change it anymore. Pity. Okay, no. What I can do is let me go back to the Autolaunched here. I'm going to delete this one. That's the wrong choice. Okay, let me open this one more time. All right, let's see if I can do this right again this time. New flow, and then let me call this RT so that it's shorter, show advanced. And then this time I'm going to call this a record triggered flow. So I have a question for you. If you have been in the other sessions before, is this going to be a before save flow or after save flow? How do we decide whether this is going to be a before save or after save? So here I was getting the case ID and I was getting the case that's related to that case ID. So this step is not necessary anymore. I can delete this step. Get close cases, update account. This is being used here. So I need to change this first. So I'm updating the account here. So I was using the get step in this one. I don't really need that anymore. I'm going to use a dot record. So the dot record account ID, I'm running this on a case. So I can use the dot record account ID in this step. And where else did it say it's using that? Get close cases over here. Now in my get close cases, again, I can use the dot record account ID. I don't need the get step anymore. Now I can delete this step. Yes, after save. Why is it after save? Because I'm actually processing related records. When I'm processing related records, I'm updating, I'm creating any records that is not the record I'm currently on. I need to be on after save. So over here, I need to say a record is created or updated after the record is saved. Now I can make this flow very efficient. I can say run this on cases, but only when the status is closed. And I can also say, you know what? I don't want you to run this flow when a different field is updated on the case, on the closed case. I only want you to run this flow when the case is updated to the stage, to the status closed. So unless the status changes to closed, don't run this flow at all. So this is this choice right here. So this is an enhanced entry criteria that I can use to make this flow very efficient. It's not even going to run unless that criteria holds true. So let's save this one, see other errors that are coming up. Get closed cases. So it's making a performance warning. So it's saying, is it absolutely necessary? But in our case, it's necessary. So we can actually build this flow like this, and it'll work. We can activate it. This is just a warning for performance, and then it'll work. Now, I need to caution you and warn you, if this is an object that's being used quite frequently, created, updated, and cases are, it is a horrible idea to loop on case update and case creation. Although we did say only run when a case is closed, still this is going to, from a performance standpoint, a potential problem. So in general, you actually don't want to do this. This is going to run every time a case underneath an account is closed. It's going to go back and loop through all the closed cases underneath, and then it's going to update all those cases, plus it's going to update the account. So this could create performance problems. So that's the one caveat and warning here. Any questions? Okay, let me show you very quickly one last example. We have very little time. We're not going to build this one, but I'm going to show you an example so that we'll finish this topic. And I don't want you to leave before seeing also record creation. So another example I created here is the create cases for assets example. So a use case for record creation could be this. So again, I'm getting a case, right? And this case, for this case, I'm going to find all the assets under the account. You all know what assets are, right? You know, the assets are the products that are owned by your customers, by your accounts. So the idea here is this: your account calls you, the contact for the account calls you and says, like, you know, I'm having a problem. And then whenever they have a problem, if we have 4 assets at this account, we want to create 4 subcases under a parent case. And each subcase is going to be assigned to those assets. So in this example, as you can see, we are creating cases inside a loop. So what we are doing is we are getting all the assets under the account. So account ID equals, again, case from get case account ID. And I'm going to be looping through assets. And this is to reset the current case subject. And I have a bunch of assignments that I'm doing. I'm assigning different values to the case subject, case status, account ID, contact ID, parent case ID, case origin, and asset ID. And I'm going to be creating a case from a case record variable. So I'm doing an assignment to a record variable here, case record variable. I'm assigning values to all the fields. And then I'm creating a case using this case record variable. As you see here, we are creating records inside the loop. So if we create like this, if we have, let's say, 200 assets at that client, we're going to have a problem with this flow. It's going to try and create 150 subcases to one case, and it's going to end up in governor limits and issues. So what needs to happen here as well, which we're not going to do at this point, but we could create, again, a case record collection variable, do our assignment here, and then do the creation over here. So if I do a create step here, and then I feed to that element my case record collection variable, it's going to create possibly 200 cases in one step, and that's going to count as one DML. So to see this working, I demonstrated this one under Tony Stark. You see all these subjects, these are auto-generated by that flow. So battery charger is the asset. The parent case title is AC does not work. So it's coupling the asset with the case subject, and it's creating subcases. If I go into the details of this case, I can see that this case is a subcase because the parent case field is occupied. So let me show you here. Under Stark Industries, I have assets, and the assets are not in my related lists. So I would have to go here to see. So there are 4 assets that are under Stark Industries: spaceship, battery charger, Ironman suit, and suit battery. And under Stark Industries, I have several cases that I can use to feed to this example, the flow. I used before the AC does not work, so let me just use spaceship won't start. So let me just take that case ID, feed it to this flow. What I expect this flow to do is to generate, failed to create records. Because I have an active record triggered flow, it's intervening with that. Do you remember the one that's calculating the duration? I forgot to deactivate that flow. Super peer case duration, the one we just worked on. Edit details. Oops. View versions and deactivate. Let's try and do this again. Assets. And open. Debug. Yeah, fast create. You see, it seems to have processed. Let's see here. Case spaceship won't start. Let's go up to Stark Industries. Under Stark Industries, if I look into all the cases, now I'm going to see these 4 new cases that have been created. And the case title, that's how I designed it, starts with the asset title, and then there's a colon, and it takes on the title of the parent case. So if I go into the details of this case, I'm going to see it's actually a subcase of the spaceship won't start case. And this is the last example, folks. Any questions? I hope you could follow, because it's a very confusing topic. I mean, I get confused as I'm building myself. I had to go back and look at my previous example. It's quite particular the way you build loops inside Salesforce flows. Very helpful. I'm happy to hear that. When will we get the recording? The recording will be made available latest tomorrow by lunchtime on the Super Peer platform. And I usually record a very short intro for the YouTube. If you'd like to watch it in 1.5 speed or something, I don't think that's available on Super Peer. So it's going to be also on YouTube, probably by end of day tomorrow. And let me know what else you want to see, because we have still a couple of weeks in this class, and we're going to go into different examples. The flow topics are pretty much endless. It's important what you want to see, and we'll focus on those examples. Have a good night, everybody. Thanks for coming to my class. Bye-bye.